If you're interested in the latest in clean, renewable energy, then stay with me. I've got some great topics to share with you today. I'm Steve Hill, CEO of New Hydrogen, and I'm joined today by Dr. Ivor John. Extensive experience in the world of energy. He's an expert in hydrogen. He's good at understanding technologies and processes used to produce hydrogen, to deliver and dispense at point of use. He's prepared a hydrogen readiness plan for the Central Coast of California. He spent most of his career as an environmental consultant, specializing in air quality and climate change. And he's worked with many energy companies and utilities looking at air and greenhouse gas emissions. He's now focused on his role in hydrogen in the energy transition and how hydrogen should be used to reduce emissions. He has a PhD in atmospheric physics from the University of Wales, and it's a pleasure to have you on today, Ivor.
Oh, that's great, Steve. I'm really privileged and honored to be here with you this morning. So thank you very much.
Well, we're glad to have you, and I want to jump right in. There's a lot of news swirling around right now about hydrogen, but this is nothing new, right?
Right. I mean, the hydrogen has been like the fuel of the future forever, and people say it's always going to be in the future. But I think things are different today, Steve. This time there's a lot of different things going on. Like, for example, every day now, hydrogen seems to be in the news. We've got 50 countries that have developed hydrogen strategies, and that number is increasing, every month and every year. And then, like, news this week from Japan is they're committing $100 billion over the next 15 years for hydrogen fuel supply. So, and then the number of scale of hydrogen projects being announced around the world is growing rapidly. Over 1,000 projects now, and it's going to require about $320 billion of investment by 2030. That all is different, Steve. So the interest is definitely there, and it's being driven by the climate imperative and then geopolitical developments, and the need for energy security. And then here in the US, Steve, we have the recent passage of the Building Infrastructure Law, which included $8 billion for hydrogen hubs across the country. And then, the recent Inflation Reduction Act, which has massive incentives for supporting hydrogen. So then again, just last week, the federal government announced, the new US National Clean Hydrogen Strategy and Roadmap. So US is taking a real lead, and globally now, hydrogen is really on a very exciting path there, Steve.
Well, that's exciting stuff. You can definitely see that hydrogen's gaining momentum, and that's what's different, I think, is what's changing. As you said, there's so much investment now and so many new technologies that are coming forward that the momentum is really starting to roll. But it really makes me wonder, Ivor, you probably know, I drive a Tesla. I like battery technology. It's been kind of the up and coming, and it's more of the sexy topic lately, hydrogen. But is there a play for both of these technologies together? How does this work?
Yeah, I hear this question all the time, Steve, and I think it's a legitimate one. I mean, do we really need hydrogen when batteries can do it? But I honestly think that hydrogen is complementary to batteries when it comes to energy storage. And keep in mind that neither of these are sources of energy. Both batteries and hydrogen are used to store and move energy over time and place. So clear examples, I think, Steve, of where hydrogen has a key role to play as, first of all, long distance transportation, trucks and trains, and then buses also with a heavy duty cycle. The batteries here don't make a whole lot of sense to me, given the weight and the volume they would need to go the distances involved, and then the recharging times. So here, hydrogen fuel cell trucks and buses, I think, are very, very suitable for the deployment, and they make better sense for the long distances. And then a second good example for me is long-term electricity grid storage, with the emphasis on solar in California these days. As an example, there needs to be seasonal storage to have enough energy in the winter, to save the excess energy generated in the summer. And that's a lot of batteries and not the best use when you think that batteries have a self-discharge issue that over time becomes meaningful. So the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power is already planning to have a long-term hydrogen storage project in Utah, and it's got underground storage of hydrogen, which will be used to make electricity in winter to balance, the demand for power in LA. So that's already in development. It's being financed. So it's a great example of where hydrogen has a unique place to play, Steve. So in summary, I'd say there's a real place for both. And quite honestly, I think we're going to need all options here to solve the climate imperative that we've got.
Well, that's excellent. I think about too, I mean, really isn't a hydrogen powered vehicle, for example, simply an electric vehicle that's using the hydrogen as fuel?
Exactly. And that's what a lot of people don't appreciate, I think, is that you're not burning the hydrogen on the car. It's going through a fuel cell, which makes electricity. And from there on, everything is the same as a battery. It's an electric car, and you have all the fun and exciting driving, characteristics that you get with a battery electric vehicle as well, Steve.
Fantastic. And speaking of kind of trends and the way things are changing, I know recently you were at the Department of Energy's merit review. And was there anything that you observed there that was a key takeaway or any trends you're seeing?
Yeah, a little background, Steve. For many years now, DOE has funded basic research in hydrogen in the US, and the work is all done by technology experts in the DOE national labs, our universities, and then in private companies that are active in hydrogen. It's a very collaborative effort, and it's been a hallmark of DOE's hydrogen program. So this meeting that I was just attending, it's an annual event, and it's where those research teams funded by the DOE, they all come together basically to report out on progress with their funded research projects. So for me, like, this is the place to be to hear about state-of-the-art research being done to accelerate the adoption of hydrogen, at least here in the US. So it's a place to mingle with like minds. It's stimulating, exciting, even as it's rather exhausting with the amount of work that's being reported out, Steve.
Well, were there any main takeaways that you took from that meeting?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, you expect to hear about the research progress, but the ones that stood out for me this year were mainly in terms of how technology is evolving across the value chain, and where we've been talking in the past about like electrolysis and how do you make hydrogen using electricity with different electrolyzer techniques. But now DOE has a whole cohort of folks working on things like advanced water splitting. So you've got solid oxide electrolyzers coming into play now. They're high temperature, very high efficiency alternatives to the PEM electrolyzers and the alkaline electrolyzers too. And then you're starting to see things like solar thermal electrochemical work, what DOE calls STICH, STCH, and then lots of work with catalysts, both on the electrolyzer side and the fuel cells. So a lot of these are being driven by DOE's recent Earthshot initiative, Steve, which the first one that DOE announced to improve energy efficiency and reduce greenhouse gas emissions was to reduce the cost of green hydrogen from current levels of about $6 to $8 dollars per kilogram to $1 a kilogram by 2030. Boy, if we can pull that off, Steve, it'll be a game changer for hydrogen. So that's all on the production side, and then other ways to make hydrogen. There was a lot of discussion about nuclear to hydrogen. That's pretty new, and then pyrolysis and gasification technologies. as well as infrastructure and systems integration. So really quite a lot of exciting things going on this year, Steve.
Well, those are excellent points, because really, when you think about it, one of the main barriers, I guess, to mass hydrogen adoption is the cost of production of hydrogen. And these new technologies, these new ideas that are coming forward to create hydrogen at a lower cost is going to be on the forefront in the future. If we can get the price low enough, obviously the economics make sense to
Right.
use more broadly.
Yep.
However, I know there's a lot of people concerned about hydrogen, and maybe shifting gears just a little bit. The first time I heard about hydrogen powered things and stuff, the first image that came to my mind was the Zeppelin, right? This giant explosion with this blimp, that exploded, and everybody's terrified, and it's hydrogen. It's a scary thing.
Right.
Can you address that from a safety perspective? Is hydrogen really safe? And are there any tech issues facing hydrogen moving forward? Those are two kind of separate parts, but can you pick those apart for me?
Yeah. I mean, any energy source like hydrogen, it's imperative that we can talk about safety. So there's no question that hydrogen needs to be managed responsibly to avoid the safety issues, Steve. But keep in mind, we've been producing and using hydrogen for over 100 years now. So this is not new, and hydrogen is not an unknown. What is different now is that it's going to be scaling up in massive quantities, so we can't be complacent as we go from our current production and use pattern today to perhaps 6 to 10 times as much by 2050. So in the last 10 years, to address this, there's been a lot of work done on standards, standardization of the codes and standards applicable to hydrogen across the world. And this is helping to really ensure the safety and integrity of hydrogen as it's being deployed into things like fuel dispensing stations around California and other places in the world. So no doubt that we have to be really mindful of how we manage hydrogen, Steve. But I think we've definitely got the capability and the know-how to do it responsibly.
Yeah, I think the key point obviously is that you mentioned we've been using hydrogen in various aspects for years and years and years. This is not a new thing. And,
Right.
and hydrogen obviously is the most abundant element in the universe. So it's not something that's new or foreign to us, and we're working with it. So that sounds awesome. I'm wondering if you have any other comments on just on that safety aspect. Just one more thing. I've been seeing in the news a lot lately about how hydrogen could leak into the atmosphere. Production of too much hydrogen could cause greenhouse, could cause global warming. Is there any credence to that, or what's your comment there?
Yeah, this is actually an emerging issue, Steve. The studies have been coming out recently that are calling attention to that. Like, from an environmental perspective, hydrogen is not toxic, and there's no real air quality concerns here. It doesn't produce smog or anything. But what is being talked about now is that there is an indirect effect on global warming. Well, what does that mean? It means that when hydrogen is released into the atmosphere, it has a compensity to attract the hydroxyl radical, and it bonds with that very quickly, and it kind of takes the OH out of the atmosphere. And that's not good, because the OH, that radical, actually provides the main removal mechanism of methane. Now, methane is a really potent greenhouse gas, so anything that takes away the removal mechanism is not really desirable in the atmosphere. So hydrogen gets a bit of a bad rap because it's taking away that removal mechanism. So for me, it's very real, and it means we do need to keep the hydrogen in the pipe, in the system, so to speak. But the minor impacts from this indirect global warming effect, to me, are vastly outweighed by the benefit of using hydrogen to replace fossil fuels. So it's very credible, Steve. It is real. Hydrogen does affect the chemistry and the balance of the atmosphere, but every form of energy has its environmental challenges, and I don't think there's any one single solution here. But yes, let's be responsible in the way that we manage hydrogen. That's the takeaway for me.
And I definitely seen a lot along the safety aspects about how we'll pipe this, how we can transport hydrogen, and all the different ways that to keep it contained. And I think that will be part of this initiative going forward.
Right.
Well, maybe wrapping up then, Ivor, what's the outlook for hydrogen moving forward?
Oh, I've never been more excited, Steve. I think that the prospects over the next 10 to 20 years are really, really better than I've ever seen. I'm convinced that the future for hydrogen is now, and it's kind of going to be, I think, the next 10 to 20 years, a golden age for hydrogen. It's needed. The drivers are there, the government and so the national processes are supporting it, and the innovation is there with a lot of exciting things going on to make it real. So I honestly think that the future of hydrogen is looking very, very bright, Steve. So that's my takeaway from all of this.
Well, coming from you, that's great news, Ivor. Thanks again for your time today, for your insight and all the research you've done, and that you continue to do on behalf of everyone in the renewable energy industry. And we look forward to another conversation potentially in the future. Thanks for your time.
I would very much look forward to that, Steve. Yeah, thank you very much for the conversation.
Okay, have a great day.
You too.